Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai.
Jai.
Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Navadip Mayapur Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Jamuna Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Tulsi Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Shramaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Thank you.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hari Hari Bo. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Shami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirbishesha Shunyabadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Who would like to translate the first stanza of this? Or should I? Go ahead, Mother Vindyavali.
Don't have here. Hello? Didn't have some translation here, Prabhu.
Yeah, I know, but you don't know it yet?
Okay.
Parama Karuna.
You want me to do like that?
Yeah.
Parama Karuna, mercy.
Which mercy?
Chaitanya Prabhu and Nityananda Prabhu.
Parama is the topmost mercy, right?
Topmost, yeah.
Best mercy. Pahu means Lord, and these two lords. Two, Jan. Who's that? Nitai Gaura Chandra.
Chaitanya
Or
Prabhu
Chaitanya
and
Nityananda. Shab Avatar.
All these incarnations.
Of all the incarnations, Shad. Shad. Who knows Shad?
Cream.
Cream. Shiromani. Shiromani. How about Shiromani?
Shiromani. Top jewel.
Yes, the shir is the head and money is jewels. Khash jewel, crown jewels. Kevala Ananda Kanda.
Simply it's blissful.
Because he's giving this process of self-realization that's
Happy.
Just blissful. Okay. Is Prananath Prabhu there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Can you do the second? Yeah. Can you accept my? Can you do the second stanza translation?
Yeah. Bhajo bhajo bhai, Chaitanya Nitai. So, dear brother, just chant the names of, just worship Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. Shrudrit Vishwas with firm faith and conviction. Muke bolo Hari Hari. Simply chant Lord Hari's names.
What happened to the Bishya
Give up all other engagements, is that what it is?
Charya is giving up. Your Bishya means mostly sense gratification. Say Rase Majia. And get really absorbed in this rasa of Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari, chanting the holy names. Okay. Third stanza. Any volunteers for the third? I've put people on the spot here. Deka ore bhai, Sri Bhuvanenai. What is that?
Look.
Yeah, Kavita, please.
Look, bhai,
Deka, yeah.
Tribhuvanenai. There is none in the three worlds. Amon Doyal Data. Such a merciful Lord. Pushu Pakhi Chure, animals and birds. Jhure is, they have tears in their eyes or they cry?
Yes.
and Pashan Bidare, stones or rocks melt. Shuni Jar Gun Gatha, hearing the stories of the merciful qualities, of whom, hearing whose stories of merciful qualities, they melt, the stones melt, and the animals and birds have tears in their eyes.
Yes. Last one. Oh, Acharya Prabhu raised his hand. Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna, quick question. I'm wondering if Mataji could tell how close the Bengali of Caitanya Charitamrita and Narottam and all this is to modern day Bengali. This is just a curiosity question.
Should I?
That's you. Yeah, I think he's. There's different Matajis on the call, but I think he's.
Yes, I'm addressing her since she
Okay.
seems to know the language.
I think I would say 70% close, because there are a lot of words that are old Bengali, I would say, or that they are not used anymore in the regular language that we speak or even write, but quite close, 70-75%, I would say.
Thanks for explaining that, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
And the last verse, who would like to translate this one?
May I, Prabhu?
Please.
Samshare Mojia means you are immersed in materialistic world. Rohila Puriya, so you are staying there, no other work. Shepade Nahilo Asha, so you have no, if you are absorbed in materialistic world, and then you have no hope in your life. Apanu karmo bunjaye shamano. Apanu karmo, just do your work. Bunjaye shaman means Prabhuji, these two words I forgot. Bunjaye shaman. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Kahoe Lochon Dasha. Lochon Dash is telling that just do your own karma. And
let's see what we say in the bottom here. Let's see what we say.
yes, Bhunjaye, I really.
Yeah, this last one is a little tricky. Yeah. Let's go last. Yeah. But Lochan Das regrets he's entrapped by sense gratification. That's samsara majia. Since I have no attraction for the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya, that's sepode no hilo asha. No, their feet I don't have any interest or attraction for. Then Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, is punishing me. Apana korama bunjaya shaman.
Yes.
Any help with that? Apana korama bunjaya shaman. Kavita?
You mean the translation of that?
Yeah, the words and the translation, yeah.
Oh, from what I understand, it is because of your own karma, you will be taken away by Yamraj.
Oh, okay. So apana karma, that's the apana karma.
Apana karma means your own.
Your own.
Apan is your own. That's what I think.
Yeah, and bunjaya shaman, what's that mean?
I think, yeah,
it's punishing
destroyed by Yamraj, I guess.
Punished, okay. Bunjaya shaman. Because of my own bad deeds, I get punished. Kohiya Lochanada, that's Lochanada. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. Discussing. Text 22.
Antare janila Prabhu jate antar jami Deshere aila Prabhu shochi dukkho jani.
Lord Chaitanya knew about the disappearance of Lakshmi Devi because he is the Super Soul himself. Thus he returned home to solace his mother, Sachi Devi, who was greatly unhappy about the death of her daughter-in-law. So where was he returning home from? Mother Shobha Radhe, where was he returning home from?
He met Tapan Mishra there.
Yes. Where is that?
East Bengal.
Yeah, very good, very good. Now they call Bangladesh, but East Bengal that time. Yeah. So it said that Lakshmi Devi passed away either by snakebite or the snake of separation. It doesn't distinguish the two. So, text 23.
Ghare aila Prabhu bohu loya dhon jon totto gyane koila shochir dukkho bimochon.
When the Lord returned home, bringing with him great wealth and many followers, he spoke to Sachi Devi about transcendental knowledge to relieve her of the grief she was suffering. Purport: it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Dehi yosmin yata dehe kaumaram jovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Such verses from the Bhagavad Gita or other Vedic literatures give valuable instructions on the occasion of someone's passing away. By discussing such instructions from the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, a sober person can certainly understand that the soul never dies, but rather passes from one body to another. This is called transmigration of the soul. A soul comes into this material world and creates bodily relationships with a father, a mother, sisters, brothers, a wife, and children. But all these relationships pertain to the body, not the soul. Therefore, as described in the Bhagavad Gita, Dhiras tatra na muhyati. One who is sober is not disturbed by such phenomenal changes within this material world. Such instructions are called tattva katha, or the real truth. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Shayam Rupakata Mahyam Dadati Shapandantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'd like to first ask the permission and blessings of the devotees, particularly those who are senior by age or advancement in Krishna consciousness, to be able to speak today. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So a few interesting points here. Lord Chaitanya is quoting transcendental knowledge from the Vedas, and here Srila Prabhupada cites the Bhagavad Gita, elementary verse 2:13. So Lord Chaitanya's message and teachings are not an iota different from the teachings of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes we find persons who present themselves as an incarnation or the latest version of an avatar of God, but if you compare their teachings with the teachings found by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, there's a world of difference. So then one would have to ask why this person is teaching this and Krishna previously taught something completely different. So that's one test to see that if a person is actually God conscious or even an avatar, is that they don't deviate from the teachings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Vedas already given. And Lord Caitanya speaks transcendental knowledge to Mother Sachi at the time of the passing of her daughter-in-law, Lord Chaitanya's first wife. And sometimes people advise not to discuss these transcendental matters, spiritual subject matters, at the time of the death of a close person or beloved person, because it disturbs their grief. And there's some truth to that, because not that we're trying to assuage somebody's material grief that will continue, but at the same time, it's standard in the Vedic system that after the death, whether it's immediately or some days after, to hear the teachings of Bhagavad Gita given by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, because that helps us transcend the material concept of life. And one will not go on lamenting the passing of the loved one with the knowledge that everyone is spirit soul. They continue to exist in another dimension or another body, another realm. And the job of each one of us in this life is to revive that transcendental consciousness so that we won't continue in the cycle of birth and death as we're experiencing now. That's a great boon for us in the human form of life, that we have that opportunity. And that the last word, part of the shloka, dhiras tatra namuhyati. Namuhyati is translated, what's it translated here in this verse?
Not disturbed.
Yeah. Sometimes muhyati can be also not bewildered, right? Not bewildered. So we can, a person knows that the soul has gone to its destination. As it's changed its body, the soul has changed its body throughout this the current life. It changes its body next at the time of death, in the next life too. Comments, questions, reflections?
In the beginning, you were saying that we should make sure that whoever is, talking about this is knowledgeable and is speaking it the right way. But how do you know, when I don't know what I don't know, how do I know that the person is qualified or not? How do you judge that?
That takes a little study, doesn't it? Just like if you want to buy a diamond, somebody can pass off a piece of glass if you don't know, right? So it's important then to have familiarity with the scriptures, and especially Bhagavad Gita, and then Srimad Bhagavatam, Caitanya Caritamrita, so that one won't get fooled. Otherwise, we can get fooled. Especially people, some people speak, with great, they have very good presentation abilities. They can speak very flowery and strong, with confidence. There are many people like that. And so just by the dint of their strong, confident expressions, people say, oh yes, this must know the real thing. So one should be very, very careful. And yeah, just by hearing, studying, and like you're doing, you're going to this class. So that's how to do it, right? You're going to the class. So what you hear from the scriptures and from the sadhus. It's very important to remember that. Try to apply it into what you're hearing. Also, quite often when Srila Prabhupada was speaking, he would always cite the Vedic source of what he was saying. Sometimes it's described in many of the biographies that a devotee would ask Srila Prabhupada a question, and he would hand them the Bhagavad Gita. And they said, look it up here, look up there. So it's not his philosophy, it's Krishna's philosophy. So those type of things are helpful in what you're mentioning. So it's also a practice. A practice is when we speak in these classes also, as much as possible, to try to cite scriptural references to back up what we're saying. It's not unusual that someone will make a statement, and if it's sometimes hard to find, and I often find myself asking, well, where did that come from? I've never heard that before. And not that I haven't heard everything, for sure, but it's good to know that the sources of things, and once in a while we find that the source of things may be not solid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you. Next verse.
শিষ্যগণ লয়া পুনঃ বিদ্যার বিলাস বিদ্যা বলে সবাজিনী ঔদ্ধত্য প্রকাশ.
After coming back from East Bengal, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu again began educating others. By the strength of his education, he conquered everyone, and thus he was greatly proud. Oh, by the way, in the last verse, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu went to East Bengal, and what did he bring back?
Lot of wealth and many followers.
Yeah.
Wealth, yeah. I wondered what wealth he brought back. I don't know. And of course, at that time, his father had passed away, and he was a Brahmin, at least of course, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but acting in a Brahminical way. So how did he get that wealth? Just by he was teaching, and people were giving him donations, a bhiksha. But that's interesting. The only time that we know that Lord Chaitanya did something for wealth, perhaps not for his own use, but for his mother. I don't know. It's not mentioned, but that's an interesting point. Of course, he is the source of all wealth, but still he went to East Bengal and he got wealth. Next.
তবে বিষ্ণুপ্রিয়ার ঠাকুরানীর পরিণয় তবে তো করিল প্রভু দিগ্বিজয়ী জয়.
Then Lord Chaitanya married Vishnupriya, the goddess of fortune, and thereafter he conquered a champion of learning named Keshav Kashmiri. Purport. As in the modern day, there are many champions in sports. So in bygone days, there were many learned scholars in India who were champions in learning. One such person was Keshav Kashmiri, who came from the state of Kashmir. He traveled all over India and at last came to Navadvip to challenge the learned scholars there. Unfortunately, he could not conquer the learned scholars in Navadvip, for he was defeated by the boy scholar Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Later, he understood that Caitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, he surrendered unto him and later became a pure Vaishnava in the Sampradaya of Nimbarka. He wrote Kaustuba Prabha, a commentary on the Vedanta commentary of the Nimbarka Sampradaya, which is known as Harijata Bhashya. Bhakti Ratnakara mentions Keshava Kashmiri and lists his predecessors in the disciplic succession of Nimbarka Sampradaya. 1. Srinivas Acharya. Now we have a list of many names. So 2. Vishva Acharya. 3. Purushottam. 4. Vilas. 5. Swarup. 6. Madhava. 7. Balabhadra. 8. Padma. 9. Shyama. 10. Gopal. 11. Kripa. 12. Devacharya. 13. Sundara Bhatt. 14. Padmanabha. 15. Upendra. 16. Ramchandra. 17. Vaman. 18. Krishna. 19. Padmakar. 20. Shravan. 21. Puri. 22. Madhava. 23. Shyama. 24. Gopal. 25. Balabhadra. 26. Gopinath. 27. Keshav. 28. Gokul. And 29. Keshava Kashmiri. It is stated in the Bhakti Ratnakara that Keshava Kashmiri was a favorite devotee of Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning. By her grace, he was an extremely influential scholar, and he was the greatest champion among all the scholars in the 4 corners of the country. Therefore, he got the title Digvijay, which means one who has conquered everyone in all directions. He belonged to a very respectable Brahmin family of Kashmir, and later, by the order of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave up the profession of winning championships and became a great devotee. He joined the Nimbarka Sampradaya, one of the Vaishnava communities in the Vedic culture. Let's look at this. Yeah, up, yeah. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that just like in the modern days, there's champions in sports. So Keshav Kashmiri was a champion of debate and learning. We don't have such, do we have such debates nowadays? Who's the champion of learning? We don't see that very much. Usually there's a lot of arguing, but no conclusions. But at the time in India, anyway, there was respect for learning, deep learning. And Keshava Kashmiri, of those people who were learned, he was able to defeat them all in argument. So he finally arrived in the Navadvip area, and the other scholars of Navadvip were a little bit intimidated by Keshav Kashmiri. So they made a plan that they wouldn't directly challenge him themselves, but they would put forward or encourage the meeting of Keshava Kashmiri and Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who was that time known as Nimai Pandit. Because if he was defeated, then, well, he was just a boy. It's no big deal. But if he was successful and victorious, then they could say, oh, even a boy, a child from Navadvip can defeat this greatly learned scholar. So it's might be slightly difficult for us to appreciate the grandeur or the importance of this type of debate. You know, if we said that so-and-so as a boy of 15 or 16 was, became the winning tennis player or swimmer or something like that, then we might have some further appreciation, but because it's not a tradition now that there's a learned scholars competition. Sometimes they have spelling bees. And have you noticed that many Indians tend to win the spelling bees? Have you noticed that? But of course, that's not even close to being a learned scholar. But anyway, it's in that slightly in that direction. So this very interesting point about Keshav Kashmiri that said that he was a devotee of Mother Saraswati, goddess of learning. And we'll read further on about his interaction with Lord Chaitanya at this time. So you see all these different acharyas in the Nimbarka Sampradaya. So there's some difference of opinion about when Nimbarka, or sometimes called Nimbaditya, appeared. Traditionally, it's said that he was appeared during the reign of Maharaj Parikshit. That's you'll find that in the Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava also. But modern scholars and even some people from the Nimbarka Sampradaya date him from just a short time prior to the appearance of Shankaracharya in the 7th century Nimbarka. And so we have this lineage of disciples. So Srinivasa Acharya, that's not the Srinivasa Acharya who was the associate of Narottam Das Thakur. That's a different Srinivasa Acharya who was he's a celebrated disciple of Nimbarka. And from him, there are all these different descendants, disciplic descendants. And from what we read here, it appears that Keshav Kashmiri joined the Nimbarka Sampradaya after this discussion with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is very interesting because you might ask, well, why didn't he join the Gaudiya Sampradaya? And I don't have an answer to that. In a similar fashion, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had association and instructed Vallabha Bhatta, Vallabhacharya, who joined or developed the Pushti Marg from the Rudra Sampradaya, but he could have also joined with the Gaudiya Sampradaya, but for some reason he did not. So it's interesting points here. Questions or comments? We'll read further about Keshava Kashmiri here.
So who wrote Bhakti Ratnakara?
That was written by Narahari Thakur. It was subsequent to Lord Chaitanya. So Bhakti Ratnakara gives a good deal of information about the later pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, but particularly the generation of devotees subsequent to Lord Chaitanya. Like, after the 6 Goswamis, then you had Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Narottam Das Thakur, like that period of time. Srinivasa Acharya, Govinda Das Kaviraj. So we're talking about the late 1500s, early 1600s. Bhakti Ratnakara. And there's different translations of Bhakti Ratnakara also. I don't know if there's one there are some that's translated by devotees also, but I'm not sure that that's they're always reliable.
Oh.
Yeah.
Haribo Prabhu's Kulokananda Priya.
Haribo.
I have one question. One day I was listening to, I don't know, I just happened to come across, there was some interview with one person from Pushti Marg. They were asking about ISKCON, and he was telling that ISKCON doesn't really have a parampara. They say they come from the Madhva, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his guru was, didn't come from Madhva Acharya,
Ishwarapuri, Madhavendra Puri, Lakshmipati Tirtha, yeah. Yeah, they make that claim. Some people make that claim. And the reason they make that claim, one of the reasons they make that claim is because in the disciplic succession from Madhvacharya, Madhvacharya's sannyas name was Ananda Tirtha. And in the disciplic succession from Madhvacharya as Ananda Tirtha, the renunciants or sannyasis who were his disciplic descendants, were and who were the heads of the mutts. There's 8 mutts that are famous and controlled by the Madhva Sampradaya in South India. And Pradhanath Prabhu may have other additional information about that. But so they're all those sannyasis who are in charge of the worship, the deity worship there, and those specific mutts, they're all tirtha. So how is it that in our disciplic succession there's Madhavendra Puri, the name of the sannyasi, the sannyasi name of Puri isn't found among the disciplic descendants of Madhvacharya who are in charge of mutts. So our response to that is that, well, there are many other sannyasi disciples of the Madhva Sampradaya who weren't in charge of mutts, and they had the names like Puri and others. So Madhavendra Puri was the follower of Lakshmipati Tirtha, but because he wasn't in charge of a mutt, he didn't take the sannyas name Tirtha, he took the sannyas name Puri. So that's one of their arguments, is that way. So go ahead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was confused. They say that we don't come from parampara. We don't have really a parampara. So that's why I was just saying.
No, that's I mean,
And they
the
say we follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we follow Achintya Beda Tattva or something. And also he was telling, all the sampradaya, the Pushtimars, they have a sampradaya, and ISKCON really doesn't have a sampradaya. If they have a sampradaya, it's a Mayavad,
No, where is the Mayavadi Sampradaya in ISKCON? That means he doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
The first thing, if you look in the Bhagavad Gita, the first thing Prabhupada writes there in the introduction is he gives the Sampradaya. First thing. Bhagavad Gita as it is. First thing is Sampradaya. Two. Starting from Lord Krishna. You know this. Brahma, Narada, Vyas, Madhvacharya, like that. So the Lord Chaitanya also, he's preached with, he discussed with the Madhva Sampradaya when he went to South India. And he converted those who were Tattvavadis, there's a branch of the Madhva Sampradaya that says that if you follow the rules of Varna and Ashram purely for 100 births, then you can become a Vaishnava. Well, they're called Tattvavadis. Whereas Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not teach that. He taught that you can become a Vaishnava in this life. He didn't emphasize purely just the following of the rules of Varna and Ashram, but he said Prema Pumarto Mahan. The real goal of life is to develop Krishna Prema. And that can be done, as we were singing in the beginning, by chanting the holy names. Mukhe bolo Hari Hari. That was his emphasis, and that's the emphasis of in the Shastra. So, yeah, people say a lot of things, and they can be met with sometimes argument or sometimes skepticism. It's not true. There is a sampradaya. The same challenge was put by the pujaris in Jaipur at the time of Vishnugada Chakravarti Thakur. He said, what is your sampradaya? You don't have a sampradaya because you don't have any commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. All sampradayas, they have a good commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So then it's true that within the Gaudiya Sampradaya, we accept the commentary on Vedanta Sutra as Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's by the same author. He knows best. But at that time, because the challenge was very strong, Vishnugada Chakravarti Thakur requested his student, Baladev Vidyabhushan, to compile or write a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, which he did, called Govinda Bhashya. So that's another evidence that the sampradaya is there. Govinda Bhashya, etc.
As they also say, oh, the ISKCON, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just wrote the Sistastaka, didn't write any of the scripture, And, he was just really like denying about the
There's
authenticity.
there's an incredible wealth of literature left by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's followers, by like the six Goswamis and others. Incredible wealth of literature. And perhaps that person isn't familiar with it, but we can educate him about that too. Lots of stuff. There's always some people say stuff. They always say things.
Yeah. Thank you very much for clearing it up.
We find here in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya, in his discussions with Vallabha Acharya, there's he had strong relations with Vallabhacharya over time, and that could also be cited. We're not making it up. It's here in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Perhaps they haven't read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Text 26.
বৃন্দাবন দাস ইহা করিয়াছেন বিস্তার স্ফুট নাহি করে দোষ গুণের বিচার
Vrindavan Das Thakur has previously elaborately described this. That which is clear need not be scrutinized for good qualities and faults.
সেই অংশ কহি তারে করি নমস্কার যা শুনি দিগ্বিজয়ী কইল আপনা ধিক্কার
Offering my obeisances to Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, I shall try to describe that portion of the Lord's analysis, which, when he heard it, made the Digvijay feel himself condemned.
জ্যোৎস্নাবতী রাত্রি প্রভু শিষ্যগণ সঙ্গে বসিয়াছেন গঙ্গা তীরে বিদ্যার প্রসঙ্গে
Once, on a full moon night, the Lord was sitting on the bank of the Ganges with his many disciples and discussing literary topics. So you have this picture now. Lord Chaitanya is there on the bank of the Ganges with his students, full moon night, discussing. And then?
হেনকালে দিগ্বিজয়ী তাহাই আইলা গঙ্গারে বন্দন করি প্রভুরে মিলিলা
Coincidentally, Keshav Kashmiri Pandit came there. While offering his prayers to Mother Ganges, he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
বসাইলা তারে প্রভু আদর করিয়া দিগ্বিজয়ী কহে মনে অবজ্ঞা করিয়া
The Lord received him with adoration. But because Keshav Kashmiri was very proud, he talked to the Lord very inconsiderately. So it said, he said previously, it was by coincidence. It was coincidence. So anyway, different. Krishna arranges coincidences too. Next 31.
ব্যাকরণ পড়াহ নিমাই পণ্ডিত তোমার নাম বাল্য শাস্ত্রে লোকে তোমার কহে গুণগ্রাম
I understand that you are a teacher of grammar, he said, and that your name is Nibai Pandit. People speak very highly of your teaching of beginner's grammar. Purport. Formerly, Sanskrit schools first taught grammar very thoroughly, and this system continues even now. A student was supposed to study grammar carefully for 12 years in the beginning of his life, because if one is expert in the grammar of the Sanskrit language, all the Shastras are open to him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was famous for teaching grammar to students, And therefore, Keshav Kashmiri first referred to his position as a teacher of grammar. Keshava Kashmiri was very proud of his literary career. He was far above the first lessons of grammar, and so he thought the position of Nimai Pandit not at all comparable to his own. So he knew Lord Chaitanya was that, they say Nimai Pandit. So how did he know? He had already heard people speaking about him, and perhaps he came to see him there.
ব্যাকরণ মধ্যে জানি পড়াহ কলাপ শুনিলুম ফাঁকিতে তোমার শিষ্যের সংলাপ.
I understand that you teach Kalap Vyakaran. I have heard that your students are very expert in the word jugglery of this grammar. There are many schools of grammar in the Sanskrit language, the most famous of which are the systems of Panini and the Kalap and Kaumudi grammars. There were different branches of grammatical knowledge, and a student of grammar was supposed to study them all in 12 years. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who was famous as Nimai Pandit, taught grammar to his students who became expert in dealing with the word jugglery of complicated grammar. Almost anyone expert in studying grammar interprets the Shastras in many ways by changing the root meanings of their words. A student of grammar can sometimes completely change the meaning of a sentence by juggling grammatical rules. Keshav Kashmiri indirectly taunted Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by implying that although he was a great teacher of grammar, such grammatical jugglery of root meanings did not require great expertise. This was a challenge to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because it was prearranged, coincidentally, that Keshav Kashmiri would have to discuss the Shastras with Nimai Pandit. From the very beginning, he wanted to bluff the Lord. Thus, the Lord replied as follows.
প্রভু কহে ব্যাকরণ পড়াই অভিমান করি শিষ্যেতে না বুঝে আমি বুঝাইতে নারী.
The Lord said, yes, I am known as a teacher of grammar, but factually, I cannot impress my students with grammatical knowledge, nor can they understand me very well. Since Keshav Kashmiri was a little puffed up, the Lord increased his artificial pride by presenting himself as subordinate to him. Thus he flattered him as follows.
কাহা তুমি সর্বশাস্ত্রে কবিত্বে প্রবীণ কাহা আমি সবে শিষ্য পড়ুয়া নবীন.
My dear sir, whereas you are a very learned scholar in all sorts of scriptures and are very much experienced in composing poetry, I'm only a boy, a new student, and nothing more.
তোমার কবিত্ব কিছু শুনিতে হয় মন কৃপা করি করো যদি গঙ্গার বর্ণন.
Therefore, I desire to hear your skill in composing poetry. We could hear this if you would mercifully describe the glory of Mother Ganges.
শুনিয়া ব্রাহ্মণ গর্বে বর্ণিতে লাগিলা ঘটি একে সৎ শ্লোক গঙ্গার বর্ণিলা.
When the Brahmin, Keshav Kashmiri, heard this, he became still more puffed up. And within 1 hour, he composed 100 verses describing Mother Ganges. So he took up the request of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Can you imagine a poet who immediately can come up with 100 verses just like that? Amazing.
শুনিয়া করিল প্রভু বহুত সৎকার তোমা সম পৃথিবীতে কবি নাহি আর.
The Lord praised him, saying, Sir, there is no greater poet than you in the entire world.
তোমার কবিতা শ্লোক বুঝিতে কার শক্তি তুমি ভালো জানো অর্থ কিংবা সর্বসত্যি সরি তোমার কবিতা শ্লোক বুঝিতে কার শক্তি তুমি ভালো জানো অর্থ কিংবা সরস্বতী।
Your poetry is so difficult that no one can understand it but you and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning. Replying to Keshav Kashmiri sarcastically, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu indirectly minimized the value of his poetry by saying, yes, your compositions are so nice that no one but you and your worshipable mother, the goddess of learning, can understand them. Keshav Kashmiri was a favorite devotee of Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the master of the goddess of learning, has the right to speak sarcastically of her devotees. In other words, although Keshav Kashmiri was proud of being favored by the goddess of learning, he did not know that she is controlled by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Next verse.
Yeah.
এক শ্লোকের অর্থ যদি করো নিজ মুখে, শুনি সব শ্লোক তবে পাইব বড় সুখে।
But if you explain the meaning of one verse, we can all hear it from your own mouth and thus be very happy.
তবে দিগ্বিজয়ী ব্যাখ্যার শ্লোক পুছিল, ষট শ্লোকের এক শ্লোক প্রভূত পড়িল।
The Digvijay, Keshav Kashmiri, inquired which verse he wanted explained. The Lord then recited one of the 100 verses Keshav Kashmir had composed. Is it Sanskrit?
Yes.
Mahatvam Gangaya Satatam Idam Abhati Nitaram Yad Esha Shri Vishnu Charana Kamalotpati Shubhagha Dvitiya Shri Lakshmir Iva Sura Narayar Alchak Charana Bhavani Bharatu Yashirasha Vibhavatyad Bhuta Guna. The greatness of Mother Ganges always brilliantly exists. She is the most fortunate because she emanated from the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. She is the second goddess of fortune, and therefore she is always worshipped both by demigods and by humanity. Endowed with all wonderful qualities, she flourishes on the head of Lord Shiva.
এই শ্লোকের অর্থ করো প্রভু যদি বইল, বিস্মিত হওয়া দিগ্বিজয়ী প্রভুরে পুছিল।
When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him to explain the meaning of this verse, the champion, very much astonished, inquired from him as follows.
ঝঞ্ঝাবাত প্রায় আমি শ্লোক পড়িল, তার মধ্যে শ্লোক তুমি কইছে কণ্ঠে কইল।
I recited all the verses like the blowing wind. How could you completely learn by heart even one among those verses?
প্রভু কহে, দেবের বরে তুমি কবিবর, ওইছে দেবের বরে কেহ হয় শ্রুতিধর।
The Lord replied, by the grace of the Lord, someone may become a great poet. And similarly, by his grace, someone else may become a great Shrutidhara, who can memorize anything immediately. In this connection, Shrutidhara is a very important word. Shruti means hearing, and dhara means one who can capture. Formerly, before the beginning of Kali Yuga, almost everyone, especially among the intelligent men, the Brahmanas, was a Shrutidhara. As soon as a student heard any of the Vedic wisdom from his master, he would remember it forever. There was no need to refer to books, and therefore there were no written books in those days. The spiritual master delivered the Vedic hymns and their explanations to the student, who would then remember them forever without consulting books. To become a Shrutidhara, one who can remember simply by hearing, is a great achievement for a student. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Yad yad vibhuti mat sattvam srimad urjitamevava tad tadevava gachyattam mama tejom sasambhavam. Know that all beautiful, opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. As soon as we find anything extraordinary, we should understand that such an extraordinary manifestation is the grace, special grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied to the champion Keshava Kashmiri that just as he was greatly proud of being a favorite devotee of Mother Saraswati, so someone else, like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, being favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could become a Shrutidhara, and thus memorize anything immediately simply by hearing it. Text 45.
শ্লোকের অর্থ কইল বিপ্র পাইয়া সন্তোষ প্রভু কহে কহ শ্লোকের কিবা গুণ দোষ।
Satisfied by the statement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Brahmin, Keshav Kashmiri, explained the quoted verse. The Lord said, now kindly explain the special. Not only did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pick out this one among the 100 verses and remember it, although the Brahmin had recited them like the blowing wind, but he also analyzed its qualities and faults. Not only did he hear the verse, but he immediately made a critical study of it. Text 46.
বিপ্র কহে শ্লোকে নাহি দোষের আভাস উপমালঙ্কার গুণ কিছু অনুপ্রাস।
The Brahmin replied, there is not a tinge of fault in that verse. Rather, it has the good qualities of similes and alliteration. In the last line is repeated many times, as in the words Bhavani, Bhartur, Vibhavati, and Adbhuta. Such repetition is called anupras, or alliteration. The words Lakshmir Iva and Vishnu's Charana Kamalotpati are instances of Upama Alankar, for they exhibit metaphorical beauty. The Ganges is water, and Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. Since water and a person are not actually similar, the comparison is metaphorical. Text 47.
প্রভু কহেন কহি যদি না করো রোষ কহ তোমার এই শ্লোকে কিবা আছে দোষ।
The Lord said, my dear sir, I may say something to you if you will not become angry. Can you explain the faults in this verse?
প্রতিভার কাব্য তোমার দেবতা সন্তোষে ভালো মতে বিচারিলে জানি গুণ দোষে।
There is no doubt that your poetry is full of ingenuity, and certainly it has satisfied the Supreme Lord. Yet, if we scrutinizingly consider it, we can find both good qualities and faults.
তাতে ভালো করি শ্লোক করহ বিচার কবি কহে যে কহিলে সেই বেদসার।
The Lord concluded, now, therefore, let us carefully scrutinize this verse. The poet replied, yes, the verse you have recited is perfectly correct.
ব্যাকরণিয়া তুমি নাহি পড়ো অলঙ্কার তুমি কি জানিবে এই কবিত্বের সার।
You are an ordinary student of grammar. What do you know about literary embellishments? You cannot review this poetry because you do not know anything about it. Keshav Kashmiri first wanted to bluff Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by saying that since he was not an advanced student in literary style, he could not review a verse full of metaphors and literary ornaments. This argument has some basis in fact. Unless one is a medical man, he cannot criticize a medical man. And unless one is a lawyer, he cannot criticize a lawyer. Therefore, Keshav Kashmiri first depreciated the Lord's position. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was to the champion, a student of grammar, how could he dare criticize a great poet like him? Lord Chaitanya, therefore, criticized the poet in a different way. He said that although he was certainly not advanced in a literary career, he had heard from others how to criticize such poetry. And as a Shrutidhara, possessing a complete memory, he could understand the process for such review. Should which I know it's past time. I was thinking we would get to the actual criticism, but should we, we can wait till next time, or what should we do? It's 8:54.
If you're not going to be able to complete it, then maybe it is better we wait.
Okay, so we'll stop here.
I do have a question. So
Oh.
earlier, in Bhakti Ratnakar, you said Narahari Acharya, Narahari Thakur.
Yeah.
So he's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's follower. So
Yes,
in that purport, it says in Bhakti Ratnakara, it is mentioned that Keshav Kashmiri was a favorite devotee of. So that was, he's writing that Keshav Kashmiri thinks of himself as Mother Saraswati's favorite. I'm asking that because we would have never said that whatever Keshav Kashmiri's talents are were given by Mother Saraswati. They would have come from Krishna. I know I'm just nitpicking here, but
you can nitpick.
so it's Keshav Kashmiri saying, I am Mother Saraswati's favorite, and that's why I have these talents, is what he's mentioning in Bhakti Ratnakar. Right?
You're saying that as a statement or a question?
As a question.
So my understanding is he was a favorite devotee of Goddess Saraswati. Yes. So did he? I'm not sure that he presented himself saying that I'm a favorite devotee of Goddess Saraswati, but he did depend on her for his, and got benedictions from her for his ability to compose poetry. So, and as you point out, we know that even the benedictions given by the demigods are coming from Lord Krishna anyway. They can't give any benedictions without Lord Krishna's sanction. So in that sense, prior to meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was he aware of that? It's not said. It doesn't seem as if he was, but it's because we'll see that when he was defeated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he didn't approach Krishna. He approached Goddess Saraswati. Oh, what happened? Right? What happened? So he was thinking perhaps that she was the main controller of his abilities and not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who he met as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's how I understand it anyway.
And also maybe because he got initiated after this interaction, right?
That's my understanding. Yeah, that he says, Prabhupada said later. He said later.
Then probably he learned later that it is Krishna Bhagwan who is really doing whatever is going on, and not the.
That's certainly consistent with our philosophy anyway.
My question was, in Bhakti Ratnakara, he's saying that Keshav Kashmiri had this misunderstanding. Bhakti Ratnakara is not attributing his talents to Mother Saraswati.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Thank you, Vishnugada Prabhu.
Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Vishnugada.